Good morning and welcome to another Gather for Her conversation. I'm Charlene Sinjenko and I am the founder of Powerhouse, welcoming you and my friends that are joining us this morning for another great conversation. I honestly cannot think about a place that I would rather be this morning than in conversation with some women that I feel extremely supported by, safe with, nurtured, and I know that our collective power, when we come together, compounds. I'm a big believer in exponential math. I don't remember it, but I'm a believer in it. Before we jump into this morning's conversation, I'd just like you to ground yourself, invite you to ground yourself just where you are in the present moment. And I would like to acknowledge the home in which I'm fortunate enough to live on the traditional lands of the Squamish First Nations. And that brings up some emotion today. Interesting. So we are not alone. Can feel that this morning. And I invite you to just to acknowledge the place that you call home, what that means to you, what is around you, and just in gratitude for that. I would like to introduce you, especially if you are new, and welcome. If you are new to Gather this morning, I sure hope you'll let us know that you're here, just with like a little hi in the chat and where you're calling in from. I'm super curious as our conversations organically grow. I think when you are invited to be in conversation, it means that somebody deeply, deeply cares about you and wants you to feel that you are part of a very caring community. And this is one of the ways that we come together. I'd like to introduce you to my co-hosts. And I'm just going to do a couple of very quick introductions and then let them say hello rather than me talking. But I'm going to introduce you to three very special people, and I'm going to ask them to just unmute for a moment and just tell you a little bit more about themselves. So my co-host from Golden, BC this morning is Christina Benty. Another co-host from Bowen Island, close to me, like a swim away, is our story tracker and just an amazing deep listener, Tina Overbury, and my Indigenous sister from Vancouver Island, Sharon Marshall, is also joining us this morning. Christina, I'm just wondering if you would kick it off and just quickly let people know a little bit, like, yeah, just what you feel present this morning. We'll just go through a quick roundabout.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. It's a beautiful day here in Golden, and and welcome to all the people that are joining us. Those who've been here for a while, and also those who are joining us for the first time. You are most welcome here, and like Shara said, you're not alone. I'm a performance coach and a strategic advisor for governing bodies, and so for me right now, waking up this morning, I can feel waking up this morning. I felt the intensity of that. And the need for that. That's kind of where I am right now. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation, and they just keep getting better and better. So I'm so glad you're all here. Welcome.
Thank you. Morning, T.
Morning. Thanks for gathering us again, Shar. That's actually what I'm really present with, I think, more than anything, is the importance of gathering. For whatever reason today, I just feel really just aware of there's only so much one psyche can take, and there's only so much one body can take. Our spirit can take lots, but our psyche and our body can only take so much, and we do live on a human plane. And so I'm really present with those who might think it's not worth getting out of bed today, and wanting to remind people that there is good, even if they're in little like not ice cube, sugar cube like sizes.
Yeah.
Can we stack the sugar cubes today? Just
Yeah.
one time, just to remind ourselves that, yeah. So thanks for gathering. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you. Good morning, Sharon.
Good morning. Very excited to be here today. And Tina, that reminded me of the pyramid in the pool when you said that. Yeah, I'm here on the Snuneymuxw First Nations territory, and I am excited to draw out this conversation. So I will be listening, and I too feel that we're not alone. I know that I'm here with my ancestors, and looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's really important for me to express that this is a co-created conversation, and we have a loose format of what will be discussed today. We have a very special guest, and you're going to meet her next, but quite honestly, we just trust the process, and whatever comes out today is is meant to be drawn out. I'd like to also voice how important consistency is. That's what's coming up to me today. I'm very committed to consistent conversation. And I know the things that I practice most consistently in my life, whether it's brushing my teeth or going to the gym, or as a young girl, someone that went to church every week. It was the practices and the dedication and devotion to consistency that I think made the biggest difference in my life. And I just want to let you know my commitment to consistently meeting in this format. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our very special guest this morning. And I'm just going to read a brief bio before I turn it over to Tina. We are pleased to be gathering this morning with Tina Ruysseveldt, and she is of a guest that's joining us. She's of Tuscarora heritage. She's a member of Six Nations of the Grand River. Tina is she's an amazing woman, okay? And I think what I'd most love for you to know about her, and why I think it's so important that she's with us today, if I could have you think of three things. First of all, she's a registered ICU nurse. So she is a frontlines worker. She very much knows the experience that is happening in the world right now. The second thing I'd love you to know about Tina is she has a story and experiences in her life that I think will make her guidance, her wisdom, and what it pulls out from us today extremely relevant. And we'll be hearing a little bit more about that. I will give you a hint, but she has just recently released a book called The Courage to Be True. The Courage to Be True. And what if we had the courage to be true? And we're going to be talking a little bit more about the messaging of that book, and some of the tools and the strategies and what that means to us today. Welcome, Tina. I really wanted to express my appreciation for having you here this morning. Just wondering if, just like to open it up for a few moments and just introduce you. Welcome.
Thank you, Charlene. Thank you for the kind introduction. And as you mentioned, emotions this morning, I'm feeling a lot of emotions being on Indigenous, having other women mention being on Indigenous lands and that acknowledgement, as well as hearing you speak about me from the journey that I've traveled. I'm humbled and honored to be here as a guest today for Gather for Her. And I'm really excited to join in the conversation.
I want to dive right into your story. I'd love to, I'd love to just hear a little bit, because I think people are curious right now. I'll give it a little bit of context, and then I think I'd just love to dive right in. But the theme for Gather this month is building impact. And why I chose this theme is how on earth do we actually think about building impact and creating change in a time when the world is literally feels like it's collapsing around us? Like, where the heck do we even start? And in our conversation with Carrie last week, we started to talk about what it really means to be better leaders, what it really takes and what it really means. And I wondered if there was I wondered if you could share a piece of your story that most comes up for you around just experiencing, trauma and tough times and shaky ground, and not forgetting who we are, and somehow in all of that, remembering that we're human, we're here, we're born for a purpose. And I think that's all I want to say. I'd love to just hear about you and your story.
Impact that we have on our lives, our individual impact that we have on our lives, ourselves, I think is really important, because to be our best self, which is a lot about what my book is about, impacts everything around us. And I say that way because until my story, I'll give you a little backdrop before I say my next part that's coming up. I came from a tough childhood in an alcoholic family, and I vowed and said I would never be an alcoholic, and I walked right behind my mother the path of alcoholism. And I overcame alcoholism almost 9 years ago, and I have been sober since. And the dramatic shift and changes and impact that I've had on my life is unbelievable. The impact started with self-love, self-respect. And when I look back as an older woman at my 20s, 30s, and 40s, it's incredible how I thought of and treated myself. It's the way people treated me and thought of me as well. So the impact is very powerful, and it starts inside ourselves, with ourselves. And my book is about becoming your best version through your challenges. And sometimes we get stuck or we get on wrong paths, but that doesn't mean we're not going where we should be, or we can be our best version, because that is always ahead of us if we start today exactly where we're at. And then I'll just leave the last part with this, is that sometimes where we're at, we can feel disappointed, or that we should be in different places, further, more, better, different. But I don't believe that to be true. We're exactly where we should be right now. And it's in our power to start moving towards becoming our best version, and the impact that we have on our families around us, and everything around us starts shifting and changing.
I want to open it up to my co-hosts this morning, because I think I'm going to encourage them to, voice what they're hearing and help direct the conversation a little bit. But what I love about your story, Tina, and we'll be sure to share the link to your book when we share the conversation, is it's through some of these incredibly traumatic challenges that you have lived through that somehow you've kept the perspective of, yes, I'm experiencing a lot of trauma right now, and I am heading towards the best version of myself. You somehow kept that vision, and I think I don't want to speak for you, but I'm curious if there's I'm just curious if what you're observing, around us right now is we're experiencing an incredible amount of trauma and uncertainty, and like I would term it, we're in the fire, like, and it's so easy to give up hope right now, or to also view it from a different perspective. And I'd love to open it up and just see where the conversation goes a little bit. Christina, do you have any thoughts or anything that's coming up for you?
Of course.
Well, yeah.
Two things. The first thing I want to pick up on that I loved what Tina shared, and that is around sometimes we get very discouraged by timing. And one of my favorite sayings, and I say this to myself and I say it to everyone, trust the timing of your life. Things work out the way they do, and the lessons, you wish you would have learned them years ago, but you didn't. So the timing is actually amazing, and we often don't see that until we're in the rear view mirror. But the other thing that I want to pick up on that Tina said, and that is particularly for these times when you're looking at building impact, never underestimate your ability to build impact, but also never underestimate the importance of your non-anxious presence in the world and how important that is. And so you can't actually give that empathy and that love and that non-anxious presence until you give it to yourself, right? And Tina just talked about coming out of an addiction and really embracing that, like that self-love and self-respect and honoring your decision and honoring your body's need to be whole and moving towards that. And so in this world, when there's a lot of frenetic energy about what am I supposed to do, start with your home and your presence, and don't underestimate the value of that neutrality and equanimity and that grounded presence. So that's I think that's a beautiful message. Thank you, Tina.
I love that. Tina, any thoughts?
Tina to Tina, it's the cutest thing ever. Oh my gosh. Tina, I wanted to hear more about you when you said individual impact. And of course, we've had a pretty deep conversation before getting here. And I know that in your gifting is this return to a power source that is very much what Christina just talked about what I would say that home place. But you kind of opened it up with individual impact. And I'm just wondering if you could speak more about that place, which I suspect is what your book is about, right? Being true from that power place, or like, how would you say it? Can you speak more there?
Our individual impact on a what surfaces on a small microcosmic level, our individual self in your household. I believe that if, for example, a mom or a partner does something to take care of themselves as in a self-care action to support our physical and mental well-being, it elevates us, but it also elevates the energy around us, so it impacts our children and our household. And that's really healthy. And on a grander level, being true to yourself is one of the highest forms of exuding impact to those around us, I think, because when we're true to ourselves and we live in our truth, there's an element of vulnerability, and we're received. It's almost like a heart language. When we share from vulnerability and truth and courage, it can be felt, because we all have heart languages and it resonates. And I think the impact is felt to be more authentic, and there's something about when we feel the same things together. It inspires and encourages. I hope that answered your question.
It totally did. And I really got jazzed when you said heart languages. Is there anything else there that inside you that you're like, oh, have you used that term before?
No, it's relatively new to how I'm expressing things, because I'm a yoga teacher, and before I stopped drinking, like, I tried everything to save myself from alcoholism, and it was putting down the bottle, which saved me. But I studied yoga, and I'm a yoga teacher, and there's heart virtues that are powerful. And as Carrie shared last week, the value of yoga, when we start tapping into those, and yoga is a tool to open up the virtues, access them a little more. And I love them because they make us feel better, and we can all relate. And that's where the speak the heart language came from.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I'll jump in just to try to direct the conversation just a bit. I mean, it's awesome. What I hear and what I love is I think really we're talking about how can we access this internal power source? What are some of the keys? And we're going to get into, like, thank goodness Tina has more ideas to share, but we're going to get into why this is so important. Carrie last week talked about one of the things that we really need to consider when we are looking to be better leaders, when we're looking to model better leadership. One of the pieces is moving from fear to full color. And, really, like, what does that mean? Well, honestly, full color is, how do you access that internal power source? And I'm going to invite Tina to talk a little bit about what she calls her Live Well recipe, because I love things that are easy to remember. And just before I do, I think I'd like to ground it in this. I wrote something yesterday for our website that I truly believe, and it is that systemic change will not happen and cannot happen without personal change. So I think what we're evidencing all around us in the world is just such clear evidence of the need for systemic change. However, I think that perhaps sometimes we're jumping over the personal change. So we're actually looking at the root cause, and also the root of our power and our roots around us. And really, for me, why this conversation is so important is we have to remember that personal change is what leads to the systemic change. And Tina, I'm wondering if you could share with us just a little glimpse into the Live Well recipe and see where that takes our conversation.
Okay. The Live Well recipe came about. It was born in my darkest days. I drank until I was 44, and I drank, I was the drunk in the ER and the detoxes repeatedly. So when I say in my darkest days, I was physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally bankrupt or deep in a dark place. And it came about because I wanted to live, and I knew I had to do something to feel better. So that's when it came about, because I had a mantra that I'll share, and it is, do what I can with what I have where I am today. So I did what I could with what I had where I was in those dark moments. So I had to do something, and that's where the elevation comes from. So it came about, and then after doing a couple of things, I noticed I felt better, and then you get the gist. And over the course of a year, it grew to 9 ingredients, which I live by today. And it's really just investing in deposits of wellness with all of these acts. They don't have to be grand. They can just be a healthy breakfast, a good night's sleep, meditation, exercise. But if you start your day off on the right foot with one ingredient from your own personal Live Well recipe, you're on the right track to having a better day from the get-go. And that's a basic sense of what it is. And the ingredients you choose to put in yours, and some of us already have a version of this, but they're all interconnected, mind, body, spirit. And I've lost my train of thought on that. Oh, and then the most important thing behind it, I feel, and it works for me, the intent behind doing these things for ourselves to feel better is saying to ourselves, we are worth it, and we deserve it, and we are loved. It's deposits of self-love to ourselves, and then it just keeps going from there.
I love this. I love the simplicity. I'm gonna open it up to my co-hosts here, but Tina, I just want to say, like, I think that the nugget for me is honestly, because some days I'm feeling pretty overwhelmed right now, and your whole mantra, that just nailed it for me. Like, just do what I can with what I have where I am today. And I feel like you just, like, that was just for me. I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but I wanted to open it up to Tina and Christina, just thoughts of what's coming up for you now. But just what's present for you with the Live Well recipe. And for those of us joining us, I would encourage you, I'm just curious, but what would you say your number one thing is? Like, your number one, it cannot be missing in your Live Well recipe. I'd love for you to post that in the chat. We'll check back in with that in a little while, but I'd be curious to know what that is. Christina.
Oh, there so many nuggets of wisdom there. I love the idea of the deposits of wellness. And so Tina, question maybe for you. I imagine that you use the term, when I put down the bottle. I imagine the things that you were buffering against, they were showing up, right? And that's how you do the personal work, right? That's how we access our personal power, is actually looking at what have we been buffering ourselves from. And all of a sudden there's no hiding behind the bottle. It's showing up. And so I'm imagining that the recipe for you, that personal recipe, was born out of how to face what I have been buffering myself against. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, what surfaces when you share that way is the bottle was my coping mechanism. The bottle was my best friend. The bottle was all I had because I had lost myself so much. It was in the way of everything.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. And that kind of comes back to what Shar said, that like our external world is a reflection of our internal world, right? And systemic change can't happen until we have personal change. And part of personal change is, what have I been using to buffer my life with, and is not serving me? And so I just love that, the recipe of wellness. And I know for me, I've got several non-negotiables, and they're popping up all in the group chat here. But mine is definitely movement and drinking water. And so I love the idea of thinking about it as a recipe. So thank you.
Welcome.
Tina O, how would you like to deepen this conversation, or what's the story that's coming out for you?
I think it's I've got a lot going on, right? I've got my own thing. I'm like, ooh, I'm really like hooked right now. I'm feeling really hooked by the metaphor of putting the bottle down. And yet I don't think that's what this story is about. I hear in the space, it really is the simplicity of that power that I hear in the words self-love and self-respect, only because they're really tangible ways to hook into what you're talking about. And it is I'm hearing the simplicity. But I do want to ask more, again, just to you, Tina, about what you might offer us. I'm hearing the doing, right? The ingredients. But I also am hearing that quiet, maybe not quiet, I don't know, but sourceful place inside of you that knows how to keep moving forward to, right? Like, which is, so like, put the bottle down, move to. And I'm wondering if you can speak to that source place of decision to move forward. And it might be simple, I don't know, but it might be right here. What else might you offer us to move forward simply?
I mean, I believe we're all meant to be our best version, and it's not easy. We go through our life and we develop habits, and some of them aren't so good. Our parents did to some degree, and it's to keep moving forward. I'm losing my train of thought on that, but I believe that there's always better ahead. And if we think that way and move towards that way with our thoughts, if we just know that if we do the next best thing right now, it's going to get better. Mm-hmm. And in answer to your question, and I did almost lose, there's a lot that comes up for me, but I do remember being a young girl in very challenging circumstances of having that thinking, because it's true. No matter what situation we're in, and some of them are tragic today in this moment for many of us, or they're just overwhelming for our individual selves in our family right now. But we can feel better and move towards that. That's always there. It's work, and we have to have hope and effort, and some of it takes courage to change patterns, courage to look at areas of ourselves, blind spots, or parts of ourselves that aren't comfortable to look at. And I'm getting on a deeper level with this right now, which is a very big conversation. Mm-hmm. But we can do things to move forward and feel better on all levels.
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, it's that the place besides the doing for me. So lots of things that we do, and we've listed some amazing things to do, is actually remembering, pausing to remember. And I think that I think if we paused and just sat in quietness and remembered, we would remember, I would hope, but it's more than hope, it's a knowing. We would remember that we are all connected. We would remember that what being a human really means. We would remember that regardless of everything that's happened in our lives, individually, collectively, that we are loved. Because I think that is innately, that's what is born into us when we're babies. I think there is, and we've forgotten a lot of it. And I think through these type of conversations and creating space where people can come in and just, show up as they are, and I hope that that's what we're doing today. It's like, life can get pretty effed up sometimes, and it's not always about presenting your perfect self. And I'd like to chat about that for a few minutes, Tina, because I think one of the things that you talk about in your talks when you meet with teams, and when you actually have that opportunity to sit down and share your story with people, that I think is deeply impactful. It's about facing our full self. And I think that interplays with what we talked about last week, moving from fear to full color. So how are we able to, how do we face our full selves and love our full selves, including our shadow side, including those parts of us that we'd like to sweep under the rug? Well, guess what happens when you sweep stuff under the rug for too long? Yeah, that's what happens. And I just wonder what that brings up for you around having the courage and finding the courage to face our full selves, individually and collectively.
Yes, that's a good question and topic. It's big for me, and I take a breath in, because to face my full self, it wasn't easy being an alcoholic, and I got to a point where I couldn't even look at the person I saw back in the mirror. And I had to look at her, and it's uncomfortable, but it's necessary work. And that's where the courage comes in. It takes courage to change. It takes courage to face the parts of ourselves that aren't so good, or to our shadow side. And there is value in the shadow side, because there are experiences that help shape us. So we don't want to not look at it. Like, I can look at the person that I couldn't look at in the mirror and have empathy for her, because I knew circumstances of life had led her there, but that didn't mean I stayed there. Mm-hmm. So without losing the thread of the conversation, a big piece of the shadow side in my talks is secrets. Mm-hmm. And we all have them. Mm-hmm. And I read in a book these 7 words that impacted me powerfully, deeply in my early sobriety. And I'll share these words with you. Please. There's 7 words, and it was, "You're only as sick as your secrets." And the things that some of us experience that maybe weren't even our fault as a child, so we move away from thoughts and feelings and secrets, and that's the stuff to unearth and face. And it's not easy, but it's really valuable and sacred work. And that kind of work ties to what Charlene says. We are all loved, and that deep sacred work is telling ourselves we're loved and we want to feel better and be okay. For me.
Can I ask a quick question? so much of this work is personal work, but it's also community work. Did you do that work in community, like with community?
I'm now, it's part of my self-care, embracing self-care in a meaningful way is what I'm talking about. So it's not just about feeling better and looking good. It's going deeper on deeper levels of truth. And that is being our best version. And that elevates us and those around us, families and communities. So in that sense, yes.
Tina, I'm sorry, I'll just jump in. I think Christina's curious. Did you have the support like through an AA group or a recovery group or a church?
Yeah.
Did you have a supportive community around you of friends and people that you walked through?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What surfaces for that is what I learned is in life, no matter what situation we think we're stuck in or we're in, and I never believed this before, but I learned along the way because I had a cancer journey 2 years into my sobriety, so 7 years ago, roughly. What I've learned is that no matter where we're at, what we're faced with, there is help around us. It's there. We need to ask for help or simply get pride out of the way and let those around us, our communities and our loved ones and our families, have the privilege of helping us and being included. I hope that answered it a little better.
I love it. I want to open it up for a circle with the co-host just before we segue slightly from the more formal conversation into a group chat for those who can stay with us. What I would love to encourage us to think about, here's my challenge, and again, you're welcome to use the chat or just to think about it for yourself. I asked some of my closest colleagues yesterday, knowing where we're at right now, knowing where we're at, in June of 2020, what do first steps forward feel like next? And we're on shaky ground, and how do we lead forward individually and collectively from there? And what you said today, Tina, it did echo what I said in my short video, and it was, for me personally, unless my first steps, I call them first steps, not next steps, because we're rebuilding now. I'm not going back to anything that's back there, because it needs to be, for me, it's first steps forward. There is a level of necessary uncomfortableness. Is that a word? I better be uncomfortable. It's a necessary uncomfortableness because it's new and it's pushing and it's healing and it's pain. It's facing my secrets. It's modeling and speaking up and being, anyway, you get the drift. And I was curious if you're brave enough to, either think about it for yourself or put it in the chat. Like, what do first steps feel like to you that need to be made in order to move, to have a look at our full self, to move from fear to full color, to be better leaders? Because, as Christina said, our external world is merely a reflection of our internal world, and that's never been so obvious to me as it is right now. And so I open it up to the co-hosts. I'm going to kind of use this as a bit of a closing circle for this part of the conversation, and then we'll continue on with the group.
Yeah, what's coming to mind for me right now is actually a line from one of Margaret Wheatley's poems, and that is, "Treasure curiosity more than certainty. And that's kind of picking up from what you said, Shar, is it's getting uncomfortable. I wrote a piece this morning about that a familiarity with discomfort it's okay. And you know, our brains don't like that. And they want to create things that are familiar and comfortable and get back to neutral. But we're not on neutral ground right now. Everything's tilted. And so to get curious and to be curious. And so that comes back to what Tina was talking about. Get curious about your own thoughts and your own personal journey, and then get curious about, as you expand out, what's going on in the world and why. And instead of having that level of certainty, well, I know exactly what's going on and here's my opinion, everybody better listen to it. It's like, get really, have the courage to be curious and treasure that curiosity more than certainty. So that's what's really coming up for me right now.
So great. Tina O.
I'm going to build on ours, self-love and self-respect, and Christina's curiosity. What's coming up for me is the reminder that I keep coming back to the putting the bottle down image, excuse me, and the reminder that every day a first step might be different based on what is going on for you in that particular day. And what I'm hearing is when I hold my self-love and when my allegiance is to some of you see me do this before, when my self-love and my self-respect, if my allegiance is to that, then I will only move at the speed, staying curious, that holds my self-love and my self-respect intact. And some days I might take massive leaps, tons of mega outward courage. And some days I might take really small, big courage on the inside. That's what I'm present with.
Wow. So just before I turn it in back to Tina for some closing thoughts, I want to ask Sharon to just share with us, as she's been listening from an Indigenous lens, and just for the way that she processes and hears. Sharon, what's come up for you today that you feel really present with right now?
Well, this conversation has really resonated a lot with me. What the thoughts, the words are innate wisdom and intuition. Just because, Tina, when you were speaking about your journey, it takes courage to change, and that courage, it was being drawn from somewhere, and the self-love that you didn't feel that you had, but you had, was there. Like you didn't feel it at the time. You felt like you were not loving yourself, but deep within that well, the self-love is there, and you just had to pull it out. And that's following your intuition and being courageous and following that intuition. And that to me is really, it resonates, and it's really impactful. So thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm very excited to see. I always so enjoy how Sharon absorbs what is said and then graphically shares it with us creatively through an image, and it seems to then land deeper. It's like you get to enjoy it again at a deeper level, what's come together as part of a co-created conversation. Tina, I wanted to thank you, and for being here. We're going to switch into a bit of a group conversation for a bit, but just before we do, I wondered if you had any just final thoughts, what you'd like to leave us with. I just wanted to open it up.
Thank you. It's been amazing, and I'm grateful to be part of this conversation. And I'd like to say that I know these times are so challenging for all of us, and we are all connected, and some people's versions are much more tragic than others. So I don't want to discount that. But I do want to say that what's going on now in this global adversity that we're all in is resilience is being built right now. This is growing. And as humans, we don't choose growth on our own. It's often placed on us, as COVID was. We don't pick the tough choice, change, growth option. So we're all growing right now. And that's a really cool thing. So there will be good from all of this.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it's so important to end on a respectful and a positive note, because that's what the world needs. But yeah, we're not going to like run towards tough choice change, right? But that is what we need, and ultimately what ends up bringing out our very best selves, which is what we've been talking about today.